Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Tope Emmanuel. Um, for anyone who is new to my channel, this channel is dedicated to helping people who want to get into IT. Do we do all sorts of introductory tutorials in the IT industry. That is software development, DevOps, software testing, and so on and so forth. The idea is that someone who is completely new to the industry can actually watch our videos and actually get into the industry. So, if you think this is going to be useful to you, I will advise you to subscribe to our channel and also put on your notification so that whenever we put out a video you could watch this. Thank you. So today I'm going to do introduction to Visual Studio Code. I am taking all the IDEs that I believe are useful as we go along, that are useful uh, for the people who are new to software development or to DevOps or any of the disciplines that we're going to touch. So, Visual Studio Code is another IDE that is very, very good. Before we go into it, I run a training institute, an IT firm. The name of our training institute is Train for It Limited, and it's a subsidiary of a slightly bigger firm, cyrostop.co.uk. If you do believe that you need one-on-one training or you need training in a more structured or corporate environment, please do give us a call. The telephone number is 0203 637 9211. Or send us an email, admin at in an earlier video I did a tutorial on Visual Studio. This is not to be confused with Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a different IDE which is targeted at a different set of things. So, what is Visual Studio Code? Visual Studio Code is a cross-platform all-purpose IDE. So it's different from Visual Studio because Visual Studio is targeted at the .NET environment, whereas Visual Studio Code is cross-platform. It's targeted at everything. So I'm sure someone would ask why or how. So why would you use Visual Studio instead of Visual Studio Code, and vice versa? So there are so many things you could, or so many languages you could develop in when you're doing software development, um, including say JavaScript, C Sharp, Java, R, Python, and so on and so forth. So if you wanted to develop in the .NET environment, and .NET environment is if you want to write in ASP.NET, ASP.NET MVC, C Sharp, VB.NET, F Sharp, and all the other kind of like C++ created by um, Microsoft. I know C++ is not created by Microsoft, but Visual Studio allows you to develop in C++. Then you use Visual Studio. But if you wanted to develop in a broader range of things like JavaScript, like Java, like R, like Python, all those diverse languages, Visual Studio Code is much more suited to this. So I will do another video that will compare the major um, IDEs, even the ones that are not highlighted or I haven't done a tutorial on here. I will just compare maybe the top 10. But now let's get into Visual Studio Code. To download, if you go to this, so I'm on Mac. Um, so um, so I'm going to download Visual Studio Code from this URL. For Windows, it's going to be different. I'm gonna put a link for the Windows download one link. I'm gonna put a Studio Code download for Mac and Visual Studio download for Windows in the description on our YouTube channel on this video description. So you may want to pick the one that are suitable for your need. So I am on the download page. When I get on this download page, it automatically downloads. If it doesn't download, you can click on the direct link and it will download automatically. If you do have issues finding the link, then do send me a message, but I'll put a link, like I said, on the description. So after you've got on this link, it starts to download. So I have previously clicked on this link, so mine is downloaded. So I'm using a Mac computer, so it might be slightly different for Windows, but it would essentially be very similar. So after it's downloaded, it downloads as a zip file. I'm gonna double click it, and then it extracts the link, and I can open it, and here we go. But one thing I want to do is actually to um, not having to open it from the download directory. If you this is loaded zip file, um, then what I get is if I look in my downloads directory, I have the Visual Studio Code zip file. Then I have the extracted Visual Studio Code app because I double click if you watch the action before. And then now I could literally double click on the Visual Studio Code app, the one that is extracted, this one I highlighted here, and it would open the Visual Studio to the applications folder so that it will be available for subsequent use. Please do make sure you do that. Um, so after this, I can then bring up my application Spotlight search and type Visual Studio Code in. So I've opened up Visual Studio Code, um, and just to what I'm going to do is take us through the various features of Visual Studio Code. Um, just so to familiarize ourselves with all the things that we can do in Visual Studio Code. So if you click on code, as usual with other um, IDEs, it shows you somewhere you can do your preferences. I mean, this is quite common with most IDEs. So I can change my settings here. For instance, um, say for my text editor, I can choose the font size to be bigger and auto save. So there's a feature on Visual Studio Code called auto save. I can use that. I can do the font family here, which are the fonts that are displayed, and a few other things. You know, the text editor, the workbench, how you want to set this up, or um, quite a lot of things. If you just try to go through each and every one to familiarize yourself with the preferences that you could do. Now comes to the next tab. The next tab is the file tab, and the file tab, you can use it to create a new file. So if I wanted to create a new file, I will click on file, new file. I could also click on command and n command n to create a new tab, which is, well, a new file, which is the shortcut. I can also create a new window, so a separate window from the one we have. I could open a file with the open, and the recently opened files will be there. I could select auto save so that whenever I make changes to a file, it will save directly. And the commonly used um, commonly used options on Windows, really, or desktop application. And again, I could do some of the things we normally do on IDEs, undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, and all of that. I could also do the find. In the earlier videos that I showed, I use how to do find. So when you want to find in files, so the find features allows you to look for items. Also, if I create a new file, it will be helpful actually. I've got a file here. So let me just create a new file because I've got mine installed, before the demo. So I'll click on file, new file. And if I just change, so one thing you can do with Visual Studio Code is change the type of file. So if I go to the bottom of this window, I can, so at the moment it thinks it's a plain text file, but I could tell it I'm not actually doing a plain text file. I want to create a C# file, and then now if I do uh, so I've told it that I wanted a uh, a class file instead of um, a C# file instead of a text file. So these are the different types of files we can create, and I'm sure there are many more actually that are not listed here. We can create, say for instance, a Python file, a Jupyter file, .NET file, C# file, C++ file, and so on and so forth. You know, the text a bit bigger. So I'll make the font size 15. Okay, that's a bit better. Um, so I've changed it from text file to C# file. So that shows that we could develop C# on this. And some of the things we could do here is put a comment on. So if I write something like this and I wanted to tag it as a comment, I will go there and I will do edit uh, toggle like comment. So it makes it a comment. So it means that it's not a code. It's just something I write as a comment on the code. Um, so that's one of the things you could do on the edit file, and you could toggle the comment as in remove the comment. If you put it before, you could toggle either remove it or put it back. You could expand abbreviation. Again, quite a few things you could do in the selection. Select all, you could select all with that. And I mean, you could, so many things to that you could do in here. So one of the other features of Visual Studio Code is the command palette. So view command palette, and then you can use the command palette to do quite a few things, which there are so many things you could do with it. For instance, if I wanted to run the build task, I would I will start typing tasks. So it will show me, all the options that are available for tasks. And I could do command. I could do Java create or open in browser. There are so many things we could do. We could type in shell, and then it will bring up all the options that you have, all the options that you have in shell. So this is something to try as we go along. We would hopefully get used to some of the features that are available on the view under the command palette. Um, Again, there are so many other options here we could run. If you've got your application, you could run the application. You could do, you could explore, and you could also go to the terminal. So the terminal is you usually use. It's also essentially the terminal is just like an IDE as well, low level IDE. We will go to the terminal. I'll do a session on terminals, but if you wanted to open a terminal, you could just click on that. It will take you to terminal, and you could start using terminal on Visual Studio Code as well. So do go through all this and play with them so that you will understand what it does. There is also the go command. So you could go to, so if I say go to file, for instance, and I start typing the file, it will bring up the file here, so I can click on the file and go to the file. So the Go tab also has a lot of uses. For instance, you could go to implementations. These are more advanced uses that we would use when we start doing the tutorials on actually writing code. So, but do play with them a bit and see how far you go with them. There is the run. So the concept of running an application is when you're writing an application, you click run. You can run with debugging or run without debugging. When you run and by start debugging, then you would have a breakpoint. If you do watch you put a breakpoint somewhere, and then when you click on run start debugging, it would run and stop where you've put the breakpoint. So you use this to find bugs in your application. That's why it's called debugging. Um, so you could also run without debugging, um, which means it will not hit your breakpoint. You could also remove all breakpoints that you have in your application. You could disable all breakpoint, or you could enable all breakpoint in the run tab. Um, in the terminal, in the terminal tab, you could do a new terminal, or you could split terminal so that you would have two terminals or multiple terminals, like we have here. Um, you could run a task, you could run build task, um, and so on and so forth in your in the terminal tab. Again, these are more advanced concepts that when we get there, I won't be able to show all of them in this video. This is just a basic introduction to Visual Studio Code. A few other things on the left here, which I would like to introduce quickly. So when you click on this one, this option on the left, it shows the list of the files you have. So you could literally, when you add a file, it shows here, essentially. And this one is used to search within a file. Maybe you want to do search and replace, and so on and so forth. You could use that. Click on the search button, and then you would find, or search for a particular thing. This symbol represents the source control. So essentially, if you wanted to connect with the source control, or if you already define a source control as part of your files, maybe it has a .git um, or .github or any of those repository files, it will pick it up here. You could also initialize a repository here. It will tell you to find the file that we would use. So those are the that's the use of the source control button. So this button run here is essentially similar to when you click on run here with debugging or without debugging. This is just a button that is a representation of on here. It's just quite easy to click on this. There's also the concept of extensions, which is quite important. So there are so many things that you can make use of in Visual Studio Code, but also there are extensions. So if you wanted to do certain things that do not come pre-installed with Visual Studio Code, you will go to extensions to install those. There are thousands of extensions that are written for Visual Studio Code. Say, for instance, you wanted to interact with Azure pipelines, you wanted to bash debug, C++ extensions, C# extensions. There's so many extensions. Say, for instance, if I wanted to start working with Kubernetes, I would type Kubernetes and it will tell me all the Kubernetes extensions that are available that could help make my life easier. The EKS, AKS, and all of that. So you will do well to have a look at that. Also, the next one is the text explorer. Essentially, the text tab are all the text that you write. It could help you to um, with your tests when you've written your code. The other ones that are here are extensions that I've installed. For instance, I've installed Docker extension. It is an extension. It didn't come pre-installed. So what I've had to do was go here and type in Docker and then install it. Also, this is the Kubernetes extension. Again, I've had to install the Kubernetes extension, the AWS extension, the Kafka extension, the SQL Server extension, and the Gradle extension. This one is just the personal account. This is the the manage settings. For instance, you can use it to make changes as well. You know, to quite a few of your settings. So that's it in a nutshell for Visual Studio Code. So to do a recap, we would use Visual Studio Code to write programs in various languages. This video, please do write a comment and your feedback on this. Thank you, and see you next time.